Hello, English 200. This is Brandon, and I will be talking about the International Longshore and Warehouse Union, which is the ILWU. Um, what it is basically it was a labor union. Not was, it still is actually. Um, it represented workers on the west coast of the United States, Hawaii, in Alaska and British Columbia and Canada. It represents hotel workers in the United States, cannery workers in Alaska, warehouse workers throughout the West, and bookstore workers in Portland, Oregon. This established this union was established in 1937 after the 1934 West Coast waterfront strike. It was a 3 month long strike that took 4 days, a cumulative in a 4 day strike in San Francisco, California, in the Bay Area. So that's a little history of the ILWU. And Jack Hall is a union organizer who helped bring rank and file. He brought democratic unionism to Hawaii, and he was a sailor and a member of the Sailors Union. He was born in Wisconsin. He made his Hawaii home in 1935. He began working with other mainland and local labor activists to build a democratic labor movement in Hawaii. He and others were greatly influenced by a new kind of unionism that was growing on the West Coast, which was based on democratic membership control of the union and political, and I'm sorry, the principle of organizing all workers into a union regardless of race or craft. And this is in relation because on the West Coast, longshore and warehouse workers formed a single union based on these principles, called themselves the ILWU. I'm sure it sounds familiar because I literally said that like a minute ago. So that was that. And next one is the GI Bill, which still exists today. It's it was called this the Servicemen's Readjustment Act of 1944. It's basically a law that provides a range of benefits for returning World War II uh, veterans, which were known as the GIs. It was designed by the American Legion, who helped push through Congress by mobilizing its chapters along with Veterans of Foreign Affairs. The goal was to provide immediate rewards for basically all World War II veterans. It avoided the highly disputed post-pardon payout for the World War I veterans that caused political turmoil for a decade and a half after the war. The benefits include cash payments to tuition and living expenses to attend high school, college, vocational technical school, low cost mortgages, low interest loans to start a business, as well as 1 year unemployment compensation. It was available to all veterans who have been on active duty during the war years for at least 120 days and had not been dishonorably charged. Exposure to combat was not required. By 1956, roughly 2.2 million veterans had the GI Bill education benefits in order to attend college and universities. An additional 5.6 million used these benefits for some kind of training program. So, luck for the veterans. When they came back, they were justly rewarded for their services, and they're able to pursue higher standards of living and education because of that. So, and that still exists till today. Next is the Red Scare. Well, there's actually two Red Scares. as mentioned. The first Red Scare, it happened in Bolshevik. It was a Russian Revolution in 1970. It was intensely patriotic years of World War I, as anarchist and left-wing social agitation aggravated the national, social, and political party tensions. Political science and former member of the Communist Party, Murray B. Levin, wrote that the Red Scare was a nationwide anti-radical hysteria provoked by mounting fear and anxiety that a Bolshevik revolution in America was imminent. A revolution that would change church, home, marriage, civility, and American way of life. Newspapers exasperated those political fears into anti-foreign sentiment because of varieties of racial anarchism were becoming popular as possible solutions to poverty, often by recent European immigrants, when industrial workers of the world, IWW, backed several labor strikes. The press portrayed them as radical threats to American society inspired by left-wing foreign agents, provocateurs. So those sides of the IWW, or the industrial workers of the world, claim that the press misinterpreted legitimate labor strikes as crime against society, conspiracy against the government, and plots to establish communism. Opponents on the other hand, saw the extension of this radical anarchist I'm not good with words. Foundation of the IWW, which is the Industrial Workers of the World, which contends that all workers should be united as a social class and that capitalism and wage system should be abolished. That's pretty much the gist of it. It's pretty much just like the whole radical Muslim thing, like all Muslims are bad, or what our president is putting, like all Mexicans are, some of them are rapists, or junk like that, just spewing crap, rumors, and creating hysteria and unnecessary prejudice. And again, history repeats itself. Now, the first one happened at the beginning of the century in 1917. This one happened in the 1940s and 50s, or through the 50s. It was referred to as McCarthyism because Senator Joseph McCarthy was a Republican from Wisconsin. He made himself famous by claiming that a large number of communists had infiltrated the United States Department. The second Red Scare predated and outlasted McCarthy, and its machinery far exceeded the reach of the single maverick politician. Nonetheless, McCarthyism became a label for the tactic for undermining political opponents by making accentuated attacks on their loyalty to the United States. So it was pretty much more fabrication, just like the first one. And it was just ridiculous, and this lasted more longer than the first one. I forgot That's like outlasted McCarthy. And he was the one who created this, but again, that was something that never happened. And here we are in this day and age dealing with the Russians again. Like I said, history repeats itself. So that is what the second Red Scare is. It's basically like the first scare, except now someone is claimed, now Senator Joseph McCarthy claims that there are communists infiltrating the U.S. State Department. So it's more lies. It's just stuff that's not really happening. It's creating propaganda and racism towards Russians who are just trying to make a living in freaking the U.S. It's not cool. It's just like happening today, or to Muslims. It's like unnecessary searches, and everyone's getting all paranoid about it because, you know, here we are being paranoid again. And the last is the Hawaii Democratic Revolution in 1954. Now, this happened here in Hawaii, and surprisingly, it was a nonviolent revolution consisting of general strikes, protests, and other acts of civil disobedience. The revolution culminated in territorial elections in 1954, with a long reign of the Hawaii Republican Party in the legislature came to abrupt end as they were voted out of office to be replaced by members of the Democratic Party of Hawaii. The strikes by the Isle labor workers demanded similar pay and benefits to their mainland counterparts. The strike also corrupted powers of sugarcane plantations and the Big Five oligopoly, whatever, overthrew workers. And that is basically what it was. So the discussion today is, that was basically the background of all those things that happened. The last one we don't even get to until much later, but the ILWU was really good for it. It affects people who works in the sugarcane fields to at least they get a decent, at least they have a union to fall back on, because a union, what do you have? You have better pay, benefits, retirement, and it can affect a lot of people, like our main characters, like Toshi and them. What if he wants to settle down, thinking about the future and things like that? It's just like he would want a union that would do that for him, especially working with sugarcane plantations. And I can see the GI Bill helping out his cousin. I believe his name is Happy, the one who constantly writes to him from Mississippi, I believe. I don't remember at the moment, but I can imagine that being really helpful, because think of it, it's just like you just got through the war, you just survived being put around there, potentially fighting your own race, Japanese versus Japanese. That must have been really hard, and all the stress and shell shock he went through. At least he'll be able to pay for medical, pay for psychiatric treatments if they did have them back then. Not sure. At least be able to have a family, go back to school, and not have to go fight for the military again. And you know, that's just that's just that really helps the main characters. And I forgot to mention one. I somehow missed this. I don't know how I missed this, but I did. I'm sorry. But another one that I forgot to mention was the Smith Act. It's a formerly Alien Registration Act of 1940, and the U.S. federal law passed in 1940. It made it a criminal offense to advocate the violent overthrow of a government or to organize or be a member of any group or society devoted to such advocacy. So that would be a terrifying time, especially if people are thinking either the Russians or the Japanese are going to overthrow us. So I can, imagine that would be people, some Japanese Americans would be getting arrested for that, because they just knowing at the time how much conspiracy and propaganda and gets shoved into our minds, like now. I mean, I can imagine people being arrested saying, "Oh, you were planning to overthrow the government, weren't you?" And it's just like, no, I'm just a law-abiding Japanese citizen. And I just can't imagine living in a time like that. I don't know what my grandpa went through, but I'm sure he had to deal with all of that. So it's really hard. But another thing is that the last thing I was talking about is going back is I was talking about the Red Scare, and it's just during that time, it's just like we're at war in Germany, and and with Germany and Japan, it's just like that's it's all we really need now is just for us to go ahead and get stirred up by by communism, by Russian threats during that time. And even though it happened, even Joseph McCarthy said that in 1950. I mean, it was just like World War II ended not too much longer, not too much, maybe several years ago or something. And it's just like he just got over that. Now it's just like, oh, now we have to worry about Russians. So I can imagine things being quite hard back then. And the Democratic Revolution is, even though it crippled the power of sugarcane plantations, it's hopefully that sugarcane plantation workers got their just pay and got what they wanted. But if it severely crippled them, I can imagine them firing a bunch of workers. So I'd have to read those upcoming chapters to see what happens, And on the last question, well, I'm going to it. For his choice, basically what we gain from fictionalization of the novel is that we get to see the role through someone else's eyes that were probably told in a way that was maybe they went through it, their grandfather went through it, someone they knew, and they just want to write a story about their experiences and how World War II bombing of Pearl Harbor had an effect on their daily life and what they had to deal with. And if it was nonfiction, it would be more. It would be harder. It would be just basically just cut and dry, just like a documentary. Just like it wouldn't. There wouldn't be much story to it. It's just like he just served in the military. He got discharged with honors. He got his GI Bill. You know, you don't have much sense of a story. It's just like I fought in World War II, the whatever battalion, and I did my civic duty, and now I'm done. I feel as though if we don't fictionalize it, we don't get much of a story. We don't get much emotion from it if it's nonfiction, even though it really happened. I mean, fictionalization doesn't necessarily mean that we need to make up every single thing. I mean, bombing of Pearl Harbor was a real thing, and these are based off real events. It was just made up by, this is just a fictional family. But I feel like that if he explained in nonfiction, that we wouldn't nearly have as much as a feeling as though that we are put in the character's shoes and that we are going through what they went through during that time. I mean, I've personally felt like I was back in that day, and made me think of my grandfather, and I wish I did hear more about his stories, and yeah. So, well, that's my wrap up for today, and I can imagine all these different types of things happening throughout that small amount of time, just affecting lots of people's lives, and I wish I was able to find out more. You know, actually sit down and talk to somebody, but it's okay. Maybe one day. But well, I'm just rambling on. Anyways, I'll see you next week. Thank you.